Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Scott and I'm just your average American guy who loves the sport of NASCAR and wants to share that with you. Now over the last year and a half, I've gotten a lot of questions about the cars. Where do I find them? How much does it cost to maintain them? Things like that. And of course I did a video already on a beginner's guide to buying your first vintage NASCAR. And I'll link that up above here. But today we're going to cover the cost and maintenance. I've had a lot of questions about that, people wondering. And a lot of people think it's a lot more expensive than what it really is. And especially with buying the cars, I told you in the last video, the cost of the cars, they really don't cost that much unless you're looking for something with a lot of documented history and, you know, a museum piece, something like that. But so today we're going to go into the cost. But before I do, hit that subscribe button down in the corner. It really helps me a lot and gets these videos out to other NASCAR fans and new fans. And that's what we're trying to do here. So, but first, the biggest thing that's going to affect your cost and maintenance is what are you doing with the car? Now I should say for this video, for the sake of argument, we're assuming that you're buying a car that's already running and driving. You're not buying a roller. A roller is obviously going to be a lot more expensive because you're having to put all the parts into it and get it running again. But for this video, you're buying a car that's already running or you've bought one, and that's where we're going to start. So the biggest thing is, what are you doing with it? Are you actually going to be doing some racing with it, or are you just going to be doing things like what I do, where you get together with a club, you go out on track, run 70, 80%, you're not competitive, you're not tearing up your equipment, things like that. Now, if you're actually racing it, obviously those costs are going to skyrocket. You've got tires, fuel, body work, I'm sure, you know, engine maintenance, a lot of stuff. It's going to add up really fast. So we're going to assume that you're just doing the kind of things that I do. And that really, the cost isn't that bad. When you're just doing the things like I do, where you're just going out 60, 70%, 80% for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, you know, you might have an hour and a half for the whole day. The costs don't really add up too much. It's not as bad as you'd think. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is your engine. So of course, depending on what engine your car has, the cost can vary a lot. If your car has like an all-out race engine, there's going to be a lot of maintenance that you're going to have to do pretty much after every time you take it out. And I won't go too in depth into that in this video. We're talking about just kind of general stuff. So just remember, if you have an all-out race engine, there's going to be a lot more costs associated with that. If you just have like a small block Chevy that's been dropped in there, or a kind of a, you know, a step in between the two, a modified engine, something like that, that it isn't as bad. There's not as much cost. Once that thing is up and running, you know, you have spark plugs and things like that that you might have to do every now and then. But really, it's kind of like a street car, you know. You're not running it too much. You're not beating on it too much. So there's not a lot of cost with the engine once that thing is up and running correctly. It's just kind of general maintenance stuff like you would do with a street car. The next thing that's going to make a difference is fuel. Now, again, depending on what kind of engine you have in your car, this is going to make a difference. Again, if you just have a small block Chevy or something like that, or you have an LS in there or something, you can run it on premium, which isn't that bad. Say it's $3.50 a gallon, you put in 10 gallons, it's 35 bucks. Not that big of a deal. Now, if you have a race engine or a heavily modified engine and you want to run race fuel, for me, C12 around here is about 17 bucks a gallon. So 10 gallons, 170 bucks. That's a $135 difference. Some people might think that's a lot, some might not. Really, in the big scheme of things, when you consider what you're driving and what you're doing, that's not that big of a deal, really. So fuel is a cost, but it's not that big of a cost. So next, let's talk about tires. So tires, believe it or not, are not that big of a deal. I was a little worried about that once I got into this. You know, how much are tires going to cost? I'm sure if you're buying them brand new, they're probably pretty pricey. But the good news is you don't have to do that. There's a lot of good places that have good used tires that still have a lot of life left in them. And they're not that expensive. I got these two sets here. I think it was these two sets. There's a guy, I forget where he lives, but I'm going to put his number in the comments down below. He specializes in selling used tires that have 60 to 90% life left still in them. They're good tires and he sells them at a good price. I think I got each set for 400 bucks. So $400 for race tires to go on your race car is not that bad. But if you look around on some different Facebook groups or things like that, or if you're in the Charlotte area and can go to the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame Museum, They sell tires for 20 bucks a piece. You want to look them over, be sure that they're good tires, but for 20 bucks a piece, how can you pass that up? I mean, I think I bought 2 sets last time I was up there. So tires really aren't that big of a deal. And especially with what we're doing, like I said, you're on track 10 or 15 minutes at a time. You're only running 60 to 80%. You're not going to tear your tires up fast. They last a long time. I have yet to go through a set of tires. And I've been on track with the mellow yellow car, what, 5 times now, 6 times? They last a long time when you're doing what we're doing. So that cost is not that bad. Another cost to think about, depending on what you're doing, it doesn't matter as much if you're doing what we're doing, but if you're actually racing your car, it's going to matter a little bit more, are the pieces that expire. Yes, there are parts on a race car that expire. It's crazy, but it's true. Your seat belts, your window net, your fire suppression, and your fuel cell. They average 2 to 5 years, I believe, somewhere in there, and then you have to replace them, especially if you're being competitive. If you're just doing what we're doing, you can usually get away with it. It's good to do the seat belts at least, and be sure that the other equipment is at least in good functioning shape. But that's another thing to think about. That can get a little expensive. A new fuel cell can be like $2,000. Fire suppression, $400 to $700. Seat belts and window net are quite cheap. That's not that big of a concern, but that's another cost to consider when you're buying one of these cars. So another cost to consider is going to be the decals. Over time, the decals might fade, they might start to peel. It's one thing a lot of people don't think about. They think, well, once I buy the car, it's just going to be like that forever. It isn't. Over time, they do degrade, they do start to peel. Let me show you. So on this car, look at the door numbers down here. See that? See how it's peeling, it's cracking. So this is something that's going to need to be replaced. Now luckily, the decals don't cost a whole lot. I just did the mellow yellow car. I think it cost $1,200 or $1,300 to do the whole car. So the decals don't cost a whole lot. And you're not going to be doing it all the time. Just like with the pieces that expire, it's not like you're doing it twice a year or even once a year. The decals might be a once every 5 or 10 year thing. But it is just something to keep in the back of your mind. And the last thing I want to talk about that not many people think about when you're buying a car like this is towing. You got to think, I'm buying this car, I need a way to tow it. So I need a trailer, whether it's open or enclosed. I need a vehicle that can pull that trailer. So there's expenses with maintaining the trailer, the tires, the bearings, the brakes, things like that, and also stocking the trailer. So this is mine. I've got a toolbox and everything, so you might need to buy extra tools to keep in the trailer. Still got the mellow yellow car in here. I'm going to try and take it to a car show tomorrow. But that's a cost that some people might not think of when they're wanting to get a car like this. Is, man, I gotta haul it around. When I do a trip from Houston to Charlotte, to go to Rockingham or North Wilkesboro, I burn through like $900 in diesel. So that part can get kind of expensive. But just another thing to think about when you're buying a car. So one last thing that's another cost when you have one of these cars and you're doing events like we're doing is you are going to need some safety gear. You're going to need to buy a fire suit, helmet, gloves, shoes, things like that. But luckily that's kind of a one-time cost. Once you have it, you have it. You're not going to tear it up. So, let's say $500 to $800 or something. It's not too bad. All right, everyone. Well, I hope that's helped you get a little bit of a picture as to the cost of maintaining these cars. Honestly, it's not that bad. It's not much worse than maintaining a normal road car. Tires aren't that bad. Fuel isn't that bad. Fuel costs a little bit more. But for what I'm doing and for what most of you will probably be doing, it's not that bad. It's really not that much to maintain them. And when you figure the money that you're spending on it and what you're going to be doing, I mean, you're going to be having the most fun you can have with your clothes on. So it's really not that big of a deal. So if you can get one, get one. You're going to love it. You won't regret it. Check us out over on Rolling Thunder Racing. It's a great group of people who have cars, who can answer questions that you have, anything like that. I'll put their link in the description below for the Facebook page. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed and take care.